I know that didn't sound super confident. All right, we're good.
All right. And is my screen sharing?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our next event for Adams Morgan Day here, where we are streaming live on Zoom and also on YouTube for our history and cultural events. I'm Margot, and I'm one of the volunteers helping to coordinate this year's event. And we are just thrilled to have everybody joining us for another online session. We know it's beautiful outside right now in Adams Morgan and Washington, D.C., so really thank you for being here with us. Just want to provide a reminder about all the different events that we have today. Keep in mind, we are streaming also on Twitch for our music performances. We have dance going on our Facebook page, which is really fun. You can learn some dance move. I just saw some capoeira instruction if you want to risk that at home or maybe just watch it. And there's a couple of things going on in person as well at Marie Reed, where we have one of our muralists joining us today in this session, where they're painting a mural right now in progress. We also have Corinto Gallery there, who has Adams Morgan Day shirts and Adams Morgan masks that you can purchase and wear with great pride around our neighborhood. And go up and check out the American University Humanities truck that's over by Kalorama Park as well, and see some different historical aspects from that neighborhood. And then we've also got some raffles going on at the top of the hour on Instagram Live, so check that out as well. With that, we are just, I think, going to dive into this session. Super excited to have our moderator, Veronique Porter, join us with our different artists and muralists to talk about their work and experiences. So thank you so much. And without further ado, V, over to you. V, you're muted.
That would probably be helpful to unmute.
Yeah.
Hi guys, sorry about that. My name is Veronique Porter and I'll be your moderator today. And I am super excited to talk about what's happening and more of the work that the artists have been doing. I know that we generally view art as kind of just a creative outlet to reflect the world back at us, and sometimes the viewpoint of the artist, and even just to show pretty things. But when the artist's work reflects, parts of the world that aren't so pretty, or shows a more collective community viewpoint within their work, this is activism. And I think that we need to give more credit to the activism that artists are doing through their work and through their community partnerships and collaborations. So as artists create more pieces that gather visually what words aren't able to fully articulate, or what the community can come around through art as a collective outlet, in a similar way that we use petitions or awareness campaigns and even rallies. And this is what makes art so powerful. It's always been a form of activism, but we are seeing more and more murals and street displayed art in this wave for our fight for civil rights. And more people are rallying behind Black Lives Matter and just general justice initiatives that we've been putting forward these days. Many more artists have started showcasing justice within their pieces more overtly. So we had a lot of pieces in memoriam for Ahmaud Arbery, Vanessa Guillen, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Elijah McClain. And as we know, these are just some of the names in the most recent and the most viral cases. And their stories have become a rallying cry for justice. And their images have also been a part of that rallying cry. So cities, community groups, businesses are interested in taking part of Black Lives Matter and showing their support through the visual representation, through the beauty and the emotion of art that sometimes words just can't express. And the artists that we have today, Musah Swallah, Frida, Larios, and Rogda North are a part of that movement. They're a part of that discussion. And I'm really excited to kind of get down to some of this work. And that Adams Morgan Day is highlighting these particular artists and what they've been doing within our local community, so that we know more about their activism and art overall as a part of activism and justice. So I want to give it over to the artists. Just tell us more about yourself and your background and why you found yourself as an artist, and how long you've been working in this realm. Ragda, do you want to start?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm Ragda Noah. I am a Sudanese American graphic designer. I was born in Umdurman, Sudan, and I spent most of my life going back and forth from the United States to Africa. And I studied university here, majoring in graphic design. I work now for a nonprofit organization in DC, but in my free time, I'm always making illustrations, trying to spread awareness about different causes and injustices that are happening around us in the world, whether it be the Black Lives Matter movement or the revelation that's happening in my own country, Sudan. I've always wanted to produce art that would not only move people, but also try to bring about social change and of course be a voice to people who struggle to have their voices heard. And because I do a lot of illustrations, my recent work, it was a series of 12 illustrations that I've made as a tribute for the victims of police brutality. And that was one of the illustrations that I've done was the one for George Floyd. And that was the one that I used for my mural in Adams Morgan. And fun fact, that was actually one of my first murals that I've ever done. I've never really painted or done anything of that scale. So that was really an experience for me. And it was me coming out of my comfort zone and doing something that I don't really do. Because I'm so used to, as a graphic designer, I'm so used to like drawing on a computer or everything being digital. So it was just really me stepping out of my comfort zone. And when the opportunity came, I knew that as a Black woman, I really wanted to take this opportunity to be able to be a voice for George Floyd and the victims of police brutality, as well as the Black Lives Matter movement.
Oh, there's so much there that I definitely want to dive more into, but I want the other artists to introduce themselves. Frida, would you mind unmuting yourself and introducing yourself? Or actually, we can go to Musah if you're ready, Musah. I know you're also working at the same time. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Okay, sorry. Yeah, hi, everyone. My name is Musah Swallah. I'm an artist by profession. As you can see, I'm still working on the show. As I was saying, I was an artist by profession, and I started back home in Ghana before I moved to the United States. I've been living here for almost 3 years now since I came. So back in Ghana, I used to do my own like artworks that I do like exhibition and everything and stuff like that. But in the year 2011 was the year I started doing activism using artwork. So I grew up in a community where art is not being appreciated and people in the community don't respect art that much. So for me as an artist, I feel like I need to do something that I can also be known or seen in the community. So in 2011, I set up an NGO where I teach young kids on how to draw and paint for free. And that's how my movement started. So I used to run workshops and I used to like teach them for free. And also we had the first opportunity to create a mural in the community for the first time in 2011. So the first time we were given a wall in the community was really, really hard because people don't know much about art. Like they see people doing art, but they don't respect it and they don't know much about it. So our first time we did a mural in the community was really like a breakthrough for me. So that was the first time I feel like when artists been given a chance, they can also express themselves and they can also contribute to the community. So that was one of the things that I feel like, yeah, art really has a power and art also has a say in our everyday life. So when I moved to the United States, luckily I met Frida last year in the school that I'm attending at the moment when she came over to create a mural. So for me as an artist, I was introduced by my teachers to Frida, and so that's how we met and we started doing work together. And this year, during the protest and everything, she called me again for another mural, and since June, we've done so far. We've done almost like 5 or 4 murals, and most of the murals really talk about the injustice which is ongoing in the United States, and also how we should find a way of coming together as one and living in peaceful, and also to use our artwork to also send our voice out. I know like some people have the power, like the people working in the media, they're doing all they can to also raise their voice out. And also for the artists, I feel like most artists in DC really like voice out throughout their artwork, and I can see that art has very powerful. So like the Black Lives Matter that was printed on 18th Street, on 16th Street, was really powerful. You can see that it took all over the cities and all over the states across the United States. Like every state now has their own Black Lives Matter on the street. So I think that's what I can say for now.
I love that aspect you talked about with power, and I definitely want to come back to that about the everyday citizen and power. I'm not sure if Frida is available to introduce herself, but I definitely want to talk more about the work that you guys have done together. Frida, would you be able to introduce yourself really quick?
I'm sorry.
No.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm in a, yeah, So yes, thank you to the dear artists, Ragda and Musah, who have introduced themselves. And I work, I'm honored to work with a teacher, Musah, who is an inspiration and a privilege that we can unite and create art together because we share similar art ethos, and we both care deeply about Black lives, we're trying to center, of course, our Black relatives' stories, and trying to integrate indigenous stories and indigenous lives too that have been marginalized. For example, in my country, El Salvador, where I'm currently am, I heard Ragda's story, and like her and like Musah too, he travels to Ghana back and forth, and me too. It's simply we feel the call to our roots, I guess. And here in El Salvador, I've been doing for 15 years some work in regenerating in indigenous iconographics. And I identify with my indigenous mother side. And I'm like what they call a de-indigenized indigenous, an urban person. And I have a community down here, and I work with them on different projects. And with Musah, we're currently using those ancestral graphics to bring them back to tangible memories and contemporary memories from our blood memory. And I work also as an adjunct professor at American University in visual foundations, and at UDC too, at the University of the District of Columbia, in both. So it's an honor to be here and share this space for dialogue and questions.
Thank you so much, Frida. I just want to hear more about some of your recent pieces. Musah talked about you guys working together on some murals. Are there any other recent pieces you want to highlight? Do you want to tell us more about those murals and the collaboration with Musah?
We've been, we started collaborating at Carlos Rosario International Public Charter School. Carlos Rosario was the first adult international public charter school in the nation, located in Washington, D.C. And we created a mural called the Tree Codex. with a group of 3 students and myself and Musah, we led the facilitation, the relearning, and the iconographics, cultural iconographics, and genetic memory. Then we worked on the Black Lives Matter love, what we call it, the love sign, with the hieroglyphics embedded that mean raising up Black lives. And we identify with this sign, and we kind of reproduce it and vary it. For example, at El Tamarindo, the El Salvador restaurant in Adams Morgan in 1981, we created that front mural there on Florida and 18th Street. And then the Vanessa Guillen, slain Vanessa Guillen's supermarket, both permanent pieces. And that mural is in the heart of Columbia Heights. And we created an altar for her there, and co-organized 2 vigils at her, spiritual place. She was murdered. She's a Mexican, Latina, stroke indigenous person, really young lady from the military who was murdered in her own Fort Hood in Texas.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to go ahead and share her story.
So those are some of the pieces we worked together at.
Thank you so much for that information. And thank you for sharing Vanessa's story, which I do think is very important to this discussion, not just the process itself, but the content. And I do want to dive a little bit more into that in just a second, and not to reroute, but I want to talk a little bit about process, right? I know, Ragnar, you said that one of your recent pieces was your first mural, and Musah and Frida, you've been doing a couple of murals at this point. What is the process of designing and planning big pieces like that? And how does it differ from something that you might do on your own or in your own time more regularly? Ragnar, did you want to start?
Sure. So like I said, I'm always, like, as a graphic designer, I'm so used to just drawing things on my computer or my iPad. And even if I sketch things, I would sketch them out in like a small sketchbook. So I've never really did something of that scale before. And the George Floyd illustration, I had done it on my computer first before. And it actually looks very different from the mural. And it just comes to show how different mediums have different process. So it was really an interesting process. And it really just taught me as an artist to really just step out of your comfort zone and really just take every opportunity that you get in order to be able to spread awareness and be a voice for people. But yeah, it was a very interesting process. And I'm really happy that I took it. I learned a lot. And I also learned a new skill. So that's good.
And do you plan on doing more?
Yes, I'm definitely motivated now to do another mural if I have the opportunity to.
And what about you, Frida and Musah? What are your processes? I guess we can start with Frida. What are your processes behind the planning, the logistics, the creating this huge, massive piece that are murals and like more street displayed art?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes, we start with, we follow different processes. At the Carlos Rosario, it took like 3 months because it was also, we had like 3 workshops with the student group, and we all drafted together from a small, say, letter size sketches, and then creating like a 15 by 20 inches collective drawing that was really exciting to create together with five of the co-muralists. And in ink, it was in ink and markers, that sketch. And then we even pasted it on the wall. It was inside in the bistro, so it was a more controlled, how would you say, atmosphere than doing a mural on the street. So we then from there projected the line work from that handcrafted rough, and then, but we had a kind of very how would you say, solid idea of what we were doing because of the say intense and deep process we have followed. And because of my design background, I think maybe I contribute with that aspect. And Musah is like I say, he's an amazing so his specialism is portraits and human figures. We collaborate in that sense. I'm more like graphic and those styles. By the end, we bring them to life and trying to create contrast through those different visions and styles. And with Vanessa, he can tell you more about that if he likes.
Musah, you want to chime in on your style of creating these large murals in the process and building on strengths with Frida when you guys are working together?
So as Frida was saying, I'm kind of like artist who does realistic painting and figurative painting, and Frida's style is more like flat painting. So working with mural is kind of different from working on canvases or like working in the house or something like that. So with Frida, I've also learned how to like work with like projector because I've never done any mural with a projector. So this is my first time with Frida working with a projector. And also like the way we both work, we like sketch everything on paper. Then after that, we transfer our sketch into a wall. So before like we start a mural, we have to plan all these things within ourselves before coming out to do whatever we want to do. So it also takes out some processes because in doing the sketch, we add, we subtract, we divide. So it's kind of like doing mathematics at the same time. So these are some of the ideas that we use in terms of building up a mural. And also when it comes to applying the paint, it also takes us another technique of applying paint. So like with this, as you can see, I started with the base, which I use both acrylic paint and spray paint. And I also use like solid tape. We use tape in terms of trying to get some outline. We also use tape in our processing, but most of the paintings that we do, we normally use acrylic paint. And so this is some of the processes that we do take to take our own mural painting. I hope I answered your question.
I think it is so fascinating the way artists work and how they put things together. So I can ask questions about this for forever, but I don't want to leave out the activism part of this art and activism session that we're doing. And so I really wanted to ask you guys, I think it's a cheap question to say what your motivation is, because clearly we're all kind of emotional and up in arms with what's going on in the world right now. But I want to put it in your own words, because I started this saying how I look at art and activism. But really, you guys are the artists. And so I would like to hear from you how you feel about art and activism within your own work and in the larger movement.
Yeah, so as I was saying earlier on, like we use art to send messages across. Like most of the paintings that I do, I don't actually like focus on the aesthetic side, but as much as possible, I try to carry some messages, and I try as much as possible to put some images or figures that can also communicate with people who pass by. So for me, I use my art as a tool to communicate with the people in general. So my art is not only meant for myself, but also it's been also used to share and also communicate with others. So that's the reason why we as an artist, we also kind of feel like we can also send our message across through our artwork. So that was the reason why, like you can see now, there's a lot of like artists using their artwork to advocate and also to fight for injustice and also for justice. So these are some of the things that I also do in my artwork personally. Like in last year, I did an exhibition at Anacostia, and most of the pieces that I exhibited was something that also gets to do with activism. So yeah, I feel like art is a tool, and it goes very far. Like you never expect when you do one artwork, million people can see it, and it shares the message across. Yeah, so that's how I think that we are using our artwork to activism to activize for all what is going on around the city. Yeah.
Ragnar, what about you and your art in connection to activism? Have you always been an activist through your art, or has this been something more recent that you've picked up?
Yeah, so just witnessing the injustice that's happening around us every day and continues to happen, people losing their lives by the very same people that are meant to protect us, and people losing their lives for basic human rights. It just always pushed me to try to make art that would shake us into, I guess, revelation, and really just rip us from, I guess, the default mode of seeing art. So basically, when you look at an art piece, you could really, it makes you stop and think deeper into the situation. Like, these are real people, these are their names, and these are their stories. And I believe art is very powerful. It's really powerful. And as an artist, I believe that art is my activism. So I remember reading this quote by Paul Robeson, and he said, "Artists are the gatekeepers of truth. We are civilization's radical voice." So that really struck with me, and it really motivated me to do the artwork that I do and be a voice to the movement.
And I guess in that conversation about creating art around social justice, some of it is a little bit of an outlet for you. So how much weight do you as an artist put on the personal, creating a piece that you want to create, putting the messaging in, getting your own feelings and outlets out versus, putting that on display and what people see and what people perceive? Is it a 50-50? Is it more, this is for me and other people benefit? Or is it more you're putting out for the world to kind of experience?
I think it's more, I think it's 50-50, but it's also more of being able to provide people a perspective, a new way of envisioning the world, and also being able to speak out, and also being like a motivation or inspiration to other artists to come out and also showcase their work and be able to be part of the movement as well.
Frida, you've talked a lot about moving back and forth and, working with various communities. How do you see art and activism within the communities you've worked with from your own perspective? What does this movement look like on the artist's end?
It was to me, right, Frida? Yeah, yes. In my case, I've been working, is my art has led me to find, my own personal story and my history, and also has allowed me to also propagate some messages that were probably not in the surface of our urban and contemporary life, and bring those myths and those ancestral knowledges from our elderly for a transgenerational bridge you know, of those icons, because art was, of course, it was symbolic in our, you know, histories and ancestral times, but it was also, artists were also, you know, multifaceted. We weren't just, you know, the last icing on the cake, you know, like I feel in right now in society, but muralism really is a powerful tool to change that, right? But also we were, you know, we were scribes, we were astronomers, we knew about what we were writing, and so we weren't just, you know, artists as probably, you know, some perceive today. Most people like have a lot of respect, and part of the, you know, even the government structures, an artist was very important and highly regarded, as we know, in different regions and different you know, indigenous communities. And well, in my case, I also facilitate some of my, you know, some of my books. We also have, we co-author a book also with Musah called the Tree Codex. And so in this case, I do workshops with children, youth, even with, you know, with elderly, and we try and communicate and connect with that that blood memory. And this we also take into the muralism we do, or I do too. So that those messages are permanent, you know, are part of our daily life when we pass by, you know, a piece, right? And maybe this is not so obviously a way of like protesting, but at the same time it is, because we're saying we're here, right? Our knowledge is here, and we are going to continue to talk about it and keeping it alive.
Yeah, I think you are absolutely right in talking about making longevity, right? How do we keep this alive? How do we keep these messages more long-term? How do we make sure that, you know, this generation and the one before us and the one after us, we're all hearing, you know, similar things and building on that, right? And I love that you brought up the children's book, because that also is one of those things that it sticks around longer than just, you know, passing it by on the street. It's, people can take it in. So both you and Musah have talked about working with children and communities, and just by nature, a mural is about engaging the community. So I would love to ask all three artists, what's important to you when collaborating, you know, with other artists, creating partnerships within the community to showcase this work? What's important when you're making those partnerships?
I'll let Musah talk unless no one can talk, but I talk too much.
Ever, tell us more. Musah can talk, that's fine. Musah, would you like to take the lead on that question?
Yeah, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, I was just saying how you guys talk a lot about, you know, longevity and making sure that you're making impact on the community. So what's important to you when you're collaborating within the community, creating these partnerships to display your arts, and even when you're collaborating with other artists, what's important to you when you're doing those collaborations and partnerships?
Yeah, like for me, collaborating has been something that I've been doing back home in Ghana, and it gives me a kind of a perspective where other artists are coming from. So for me, working with Frida, I also learned something about like the Latino that I don't know, and she also learned something about the African culture and some African symbols and how we do our stuff back home in Africa. So collaboration has been something that I like doing. I love doing because it helps me to explore and also learn something new, and also share what I have with the community and also with the people around that I'm working with. And it has been a really like good way for me to learn from other artists and also share my experience and also share my views on my work and some other stuff that I do back home. So I think that's what I can see for now when it comes to the collaboration with artists. Like for me, I don't have a problem doing that. Some artists find it difficult, like collaborating with other artists, because maybe they might have different ideas on how they do their painting. But for me, it's something that I like doing, and I've never encountered any problem doing any collaboration with other artists, and I've never regretted collaborating with any other artists or community so far that I've worked with. Yeah.
Raga, did you want to add anything on that?
Sorry, I was on mute. But yeah, I was saying, yeah, I think collaborating with other artists is always great because artwork offers a visual language that doesn't really necessarily have any borders. So regardless of, you know, what language or what culture you come from, people will always feel the emotion of the art. And that's why art can be very powerful. So just collaborating, you are able to learn more about different cultures or even different issues or struggles, and then also collaborate and be able to together spread the word and spread awareness.
So one thing I wanted to chat with you all about is that all of you have talked about, well, at least I know that Ragda, you haven't mentioned yet, but Frida and Musah talk a lot about working with children when they're creating murals or for the children's books. And I really wanted to talk about, because in this day and age, you know, what's happening is heavy for adults and more so for kids who are both being exposed to, you know, the negative and the evils of the world, and also trying to figure out how to process it within the small realm of life that they've been in that moment, right? They're not as old and as wise as us. So I guess, what are some of the things you guys have learned from possibly working with children, and especially when doing activism and social justice pieces? And Ragnar, you can start if you'd like, if you feel like you have something to contribute to this part. And even just about creating pieces that children can also link to, as they're also important parts of our community.
Well, I want to add that we have a third collaborator in our collective, and her name is Etai Rogers-Fett. And she's not here, but she's been contributing to the mural, and also to the sketch. There was a sketch that was distributed for children to color in. So she worked on that drawing and the inking and also the thinking, right? That was collaborative, in embedding some of her Ashkenazi Jewish heritage in it. So this is why we're, you know, we name ourselves like a working cultural collective mural makers. And she also works with children. She's a teacher, an art teacher, as well as Musah. And we feel, you know, a call to transmit messages to children that are concurrent with you know, our history and our culture, so that they are enriched by you know, decolonial visions too, which is highly important to retell history the way our ancestors saw it, and not the way that we were in position to learn and to feel and to see and to you know, act. So we try to go against those streams also, you know, in the way that we connect with the new generations. And Etai is a student at UDC, but she's also an artist. She was my student there.
I love that idea about alternative methods of education, and, you know, reaching kids in different ways than just the book learning, than just in a classroom. I think that's super important. And Margot and I must have been on the same wavelength, because she also shared in a chat a question about children. So I just want to read her question because it's super related. And probably more articulate than the one that I gave you guys, which was a little rambly. So Margot says, some of you have been involved specifically with youth to encourage and empower them in life. Within the diverse communities of Adams Morgan and DC, how do you share with young children the issues plaguing our society to still be positive? How do you feel like art helps them in their understanding of these complex issues? Musah, did you want to chime in on that?
So for me, most of the murals that I did back home in Ghana were also to do with symbols. And some of these symbols, like most of these kids, when they see it, they kind of like ask questions about it. So that's one of the ways that I also used to communicate with kids that I've been working with, because the symbols that we normally use has meaning. So every symbol that we draw or we paint has its own meaning. And we also let them to take part in the painting, so they feel like they are part of the process and also the mural. And they can also like share the reasons with their other colleagues or their other friends. So when we paint mural or when we create mural, we allowed some kids to take part in painting and also in drawing. So they also feel like they are part of the concept, or they are part of the idea that which has been created, so that they don't feel like they are out whenever such thing is going on. So it's one of the strategic things that I use personally. Like anytime I do Christmas, I do invite them to take part, even if they are not interested in doing art. I just like direct them and guide them. At the end, they create a nice piece. I can even show you some of two of the students came into where the mural is, and I gave them the opportunity. So they painted this fish. I forgot the name. I think they're students of Norway. So they painted this fish on this mural, and also the tree right here. So anytime, like I did, try as much as possible to let the kids take part, so they feel like they are also important, and also they feel good when they do such things. Frida, you want to go now?
Yeah, did you guys want to chime in? I don't want to cut off and ask another question if you guys still had stuff to offer this one.
This is Margot. Hi, everyone. This is amazing. Thank you for sharing. I also just want to chime in because Nancy, I see you on here and I see you working over there with your film and prints, and it's perfect. I mean, it's the right thing to do. But also just to highlight Nancy Shia, who has been an artist and activist also in Adams Morgan area for decades, who was leading the first panel today on some of the, past, not past, the greats from Adams Morgan and earlier generations. And Nancy, I just wondered if you wanted to chime in at all, also because you're on here about art and activism and some pieces from the later, earlier years, or also right now, and how you are continuing to just fuel that as you're so actively engaged as well.
Well, as an activist artist, we would do murals in the alleys and on the plywood boards when things were being renovated. And the murals, I guess in the 70s, were more using spray paint, but in the 80s and 90s, we would do a lot of wheat pasted murals, not expecting them to stay up especially long, but they were all very political. And into the 2000s, especially when the Iraq War started, I think it was 2003, we sustained a mural next to the Safeway all summer after the Iraq War started with, we took the Washington Post published the Faces of the Fallen. So we would post all of the soldiers who lost their lives in Iraq and get a lot of different posters. So that was really very activist art. And we would do those as if they were murals because they were as big as murals. Without, now there's special programs the government gives money to do it. We wouldn't, have any permission to do it, but it was a whole lot easier to get away with stuff back then than it is now. Because if a policeman would come by and say, "What are you doing?" all we had to say was, "Well, we got permission," and then they'd just leave us alone. And there'd be, and as we're wheat pasting up these murals on the sidewalk, people would come by and join in and help us do some wheat pasting or writing on the wall or whatever. So, and it was all very political because of the war that started. So, and then, the mural that's at, the big mural that's on the wall in back of Kogiebau, that was put up in 1977. And most of it was done by the whole neighborhood, but it came out of an organization we had going called Centro de Arte. And there were a lot of artists from South America. A lot of them came to Washington because they were purging all the leftists in Venezuela and Argentina, and Chile had had a coup. So we had a whole lot of Chileans in the 70s that were very creative. So it was very inspirational to be around a lot of South American artists because they had been active artists in their country way longer than I had ever considered doing it. So that's part of the history. So there are images, there are photographs of a lot of the wheat pasting and wall writing. And the wall writing wasn't tagging, it was just poetry. A lot of it was just poetry about the drug situation in DC or just living a green life. So go ahead.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for giving us that bit of context. So I think we're very wrapped up in what's going on now and hearing, the groundwork that's been laid for the activism through art that we're doing now is very powerful. So thank you so much for that. I am going to be cognizant on time. So this is going to be the last question, which is an audience question. And it's a nice kind of wrap up question, I think. So there has been a recent emphasis on STEM, which is the sciences and such, and also incorporating art now into STEAM. Do you find that young children and young adults are encouraged more specifically right now with the prominence of social justice issues than in the recent past? And what are ways for youth and everyone to get more involved? Ragnar, do you want to give us some of your insight on this? Do you think people are more engaged now with art? And what are some ways for youth, but particularly everyone, to kind of harness the power of activism and art and social justice?
Yeah, I definitely think that people are more trying to get their artwork out there more now than before. And as an artist, I would give advice just to always put your work out there, put your emotions and your feelings into a canvas or into a mural or whatever it is you're passionate about. And I know sometimes, like as an artist, you doubt yourself. Sometimes you're just like, how is it going to make a change? Is it really going to work? But you would be surprised how much people would be inspired by your work or just motivated as an artist themselves to put their work out there too. So I would say in order to motivate people and also spread the word, just always look to inspire yourself and also inspire others.
Frida, what would you like to add for us?
Beautiful. Thank you, Ragda. That's beautiful. I would invite, if we're inviting, what we've been doing is also involving whoever wants to come and contribute to a piece that we're making, to come and contribute. Because when we're children, we're told that we're not artists, that we're not poets, that we just have to write and learn math. And this is the colonial way of teaching us, of schooling us. But in ancestral times and in, living communities today, children still weave with their grandparents, or, they paint. So everyone has art in themselves to bring. But there's layers of fear and the onion layers we have to peel to bring that out. So the more us artists that are already breaking those boundaries invite others, the more understanding there is about the practice of art too. And the more community-led, our pieces are, that don't have to be that precious. You see, you saw how Musah and Etai are sharing their wall, with children. This is a real wall, right? And so it's an amazing experience for any child or young person, or any person, elderly too, to be able to feel empowered by that feeling.
I think both of those things that you guys mentioned, as far as believing in yourself and connecting with others, all of that seems so powerful and important. Musah, do you want to wrap it up for us as far as what words we can give to everyday folks and even the children moving forward, what they can do?
Yeah, there's one thing I also noticed when I went to the protest. I've seen a lot of people engaging in art, and most of the protesters have their placards, and it looks like they created it by their own. Some years back, all these placards is being created by artists, but now everyone can sit in his house, in his office, to create an artwork to just bring it out to protest. So I think a lot of people are engaging in art, and also most of the children nowadays are more into art because it's something which is surrounding them each and every time. So so I have to say both young and old, and everyone is doing the art on their own. So I would say the future is bright for art, because now artists are using their art to make a living. Artists are making big money and all this stuff going on. So I think artists will be forward.
I hate to cut down this conversation because it's been so rich, and I have so many more questions, and I want to know all the things. But this hour went by really fast, and we are quickly approaching 4 p.m. So I just want to thank everyone for coming and having this discussion with our artists, Musah Swallah, Frida Larios, and Ragda Noah. Sorry, I mispronounced your name earlier. And please feel free to check out Admo Day for all the rest of the events that are happening right now. Margot, is there anything else you want to add in?
Margot had to drop off to prep for the 4 o'clock, but I'm just she asked me to just share this so that folks could see the lineup coming up. She's getting the taxation with representation session queued up and ready. So thanks, Veronique, for mentioning that. We'll have that one up and running on our page. On behalf of Margot and the other volunteers, thank you guys. This was such an awesome session, and I really appreciate all of you being on here. So thank you from the volunteers. Anything to add, Veronique?
No, that's it. Thank you all so much. I appreciate it. It was wonderful.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, as Morgan.